Dear colleagues, we resume our working day. The topic of the next briefing is as follows: the Ministers of Defense of Ukraine and NATO in Brussels, common threats and common responses. And we have Mr. Dolgov, Deputy Minister of Defense, on European integration. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to share my impressions and my opinion about the meeting of the Ministers of Defense of Ukraine and NATO. The meeting was held on June 25th, while today we have July 9th, and I will explain the delay in delivering this briefing. First of all, this day is a very specific day in the history of relations between Ukraine and NATO. And 18 years ago, on this very day, we signed a charter on cooperation between Ukraine and the NATO countries. And the second factor is that each day which passed upon the meeting, both the minister and the ministry have been working very intensively to implement the decisions made at the meeting. It's true that the situation in which Ukraine found itself in result of Russian aggression revealed many challenges to the security, not just of Ukraine, but of other countries in Europe and even in the world. Many countries responded in this or that way, but these are our servicemen who stay in the front line and they defend our country from the aggressors. Our message at the meeting was that the world has to respond adequately to the situation, and actually the world is responding. NATO has already started to respond. The first decisions were made at the NATO summit in Wales, and the implementation of those decisions also have started. They have strengthened the quick response forces, and instead of 13,000, it will increase its number up to 40,000. Then NATO plans to strengthen its security forces in the south flank, that is in the aquifer of the Black Sea. They have also established 6 multinational commanders in the Baltic countries, Czech Republic, Poland, Romania, Hungary. And at the next summit, they will review the NATO strategy documents and with consideration of the new situation. The Russian behavior from the very beginning was the behavior of aggressor, and during our joint meeting, they used this opportunity to demonstrate their solidarity with Ukraine and Ukrainian people, inviting the Minister of Defense of Ukraine to visit the meeting and to make a statement at the Commission Ukraine-NATO. The Secretary General of NATO has underscored that Ukrainian experience is very important for NATO, since Ukrainian forces has got unique experience in combat situation during the last year. Also, we had a chance to express what are our expectations as to the NATO countries for the future. The minister, in his turn, familiarized the NATO member countries about the situation in ATO area and emphasized that we managed to stop the aggressor. But Crimea remains occupied, and in the eastern Ukraine, despite ceasefire agreements, the shellings continue and civil population suffers. And NATO is familiar with these facts, and again they emphasized that they are aware about Russia's use of weapons, the supplies of Russian weapons into the eastern Ukraine, and about support which they deliver to the militants in the eastern Ukraine. What response could be provided by the bloc, by the alliance? First of all, they can provide assistance on urgency basis, trying to save lives of our servicemen and supporting Ukrainian society in counteraction to aggression. And the second aspect is that Ukrainians' security and defense sector requires radical modernization, and due to this necessity, the National Security and Defense Council has developed, and the President has approved the strategy of national security. This is the basic document which sets principal steps to be carried out in Ukrainian security and defense sector reform in order to prepare to full-fledged access of Ukraine to NATO. The President has formulated this task for the Ministry of Defense and Minister of Defense in Brussels, has confirmed that all the steps which are made by the authorities in the defense sector in Ukraine are aimed at preparing our security and defense sector to full compliance with NATO standards, and finally to reach the same standards which are used by the NATO countries. At the beginning of my statement, I mentioned that we wanted to show how serious we are about implementation of this plan. And now let me show some examples. The next day after Brussels meeting, the Canadian Minister of Defense has visited Ukraine. He visited our training center in Lviv Oblast, where Canadian military experts, trainers continue to work with Ukrainian servicemen. The United Kingdom confirmed their readiness to raise its financial assistance to Ukraine in a form of trainings. Each trainer or instructor seconded by the NATO country, they train Ukrainian soldiers and officers how to act based on the NATO standards. Thus, we are already introducing NATO standards. These days, I had a meeting with the Swedish ambassador, and he assured me that in early autumn Sweden will send military instructors, military medical instructors who will health trainings for Ukrainian field medical staff, how to rescue lives. Also, they plan to supply first aid kits and teach how to use them. The United States continues to stay our strategic partner. Within several days after Brussels meeting, Ukraine was attended by several Ukrainian experts who, several American experts who worked assessing technical assistance needs and needs assessment for assistance in the ongoing year. For us, the main task for the Ministry of Defense, the major objective is to use this delivered assistance efficiently in order to prepare our military units to application of NATO standards. I also will provide one more example. The media and society have noticed that recently the Parliament of Ukraine have passed have ratified two international documents which allow us starting practical implementation of some agreements with NATO. This is agreement and memorandum which enforce agreement about trust fund, etc., cyber security. All these efforts are aimed at strengthening security and defense sector in Ukraine. Moreover, today, in the National Military Institute, we held the public discussion of two more documents of conceptual nature which are needed to launch our reforms in military reform. The military doctrine of Ukraine and concept for the defense sector development. These documents clearly set the role of each enforcement ministry in strengthening defense of the country. That is what I want to say, that reforms cannot happen overnight, but at the same time, you should not expect them to fulfill without everyday work. That's why we have military exercises for our servicemen. We develop new standards every day, including new standards as to social protection. I would like to draw your attention to our legislative efforts aimed at social protection of those who were killed during combat and their children and family members. I could continue, but I would like to reserve some time for your questions. Eventually, I would like to inform you that in the nearest future we will have Cyber Guardian or Trident 2015. From Ukrainian side, there will be 860 participants, servicemen participating in this exercises. Approximately the same numbers will be from other countries. The biggest number of servicemen will be from the United States. Also the UK, Poland, Georgia, Bulgaria, Lithuania will participate in those exercises. The exercises are aimed at strengthening coordination between coordination in joint actions. We believe that this event will be useful for the armed forces of Ukraine and participants from other countries who will arrive for this training. Now I'm ready to answer your questions. Dear colleagues, please, your questions. Fifth TV channel. You mentioned more than 100 people. When the exercise will start? This will be between July 20th till July 30th. This will be in Yavarim. Any further questions? And the last statement, the last thing which I forgot to mention, during the session of the defense ministers, Ukraine and NATO, it was announced that the trust fund for humanitarian demining will be established. The problem persists, and the emergency situation service in Ukraine were almost fully destroyed by militants, and we have to increase the equipment of those services. The CMM OSCE mission, when they left Shirokin, left no local residents. They destroyed up to 80% of residential houses and left a huge number of unexploited ordnance. And this ordinance has to be demined, and without demining, local population won't come back. And we hope that our capacity in terms of demining will be strengthened via cooperation with NATO. Thank you very much, Mr. Dolgov. We will be happy to see you in the future. The schedule for tomorrow will be around 7. Please follow us on website. Thank you.